As I said, my name is Bas Raijmakers. I'm from a company called Standby. We do design research for service innovation. I'm also a lecturer or reader at Design Academy Eindhoven here. I've got a mixed background in both ethnography, looking at how people use media and technology, but also in interaction design. I'd like to give you a few slides about kind of where I come from. What we do is consumer-driven innovation. So it's looking at how people actually be brought into innovation processes. We help companies and organizations do that. And the kind of name we give to that is empathic conversations between the people that will use innovations eventually and the people that create them, and perhaps the people that earn some money off them as well. There's different ways of doing that, but having these multiple disciplines together, that's really crucial. And different departments of an organization, or even different organizations together, that's really crucial. We find more and more. So that's also what I'll talk about a bit more in my presentation. These are some of the methods that we use. There's many methods and tools around on the internet. I guess the most important is how you use these things, and I'll give you a few examples in my presentation. So this is a very simple graph of what we went through in the project that I'm going to talk to you about. A few iterations, and it's quite crucial actually that you try to make these iterations as quick as possible, we find, because every time you find you want to involve more people, and you should give the opportunity to people in your organization or even other organizations to connect. So the project I'll talk about is what we've worked on the past year and a half, more or less, with ProRail initially, but then also with NS later. It's about trains, in particular what moves people on the platform. So it's looking at what happens on platforms, not so much on the station itself, but actually the whole process around waiting for the train, getting in the train, and so on. What are people's needs and motives? We worked initially with ProRail, who is responsible for infrastructure in the Netherlands, not for the trains itself, that's NS. And they basically look at people as crowds. They look at heat maps. They don't look at individuals. So they've never even talked to people. They don't know why people move in such strange way on the platform. They know how they move. We looked with them at what are opportunities for improvement. So we did research on location, actually on those platforms with people, following people, observing, but also talking to people. And what we learned there, we kind of visualized in maps, and I brought some. So there's some of here on the wall as well. You can have a look at later. To kind of, with arrows, with little stories, with little films connected as well, actually, you can see what actually happens on these platforms. And an interview with passengers, that's really crucial to know the why behind those practices. Because if you don't know why people all stand at the bottom of the stairs, for instance, you don't know how you can actually persuade them to perhaps wait somewhere else. This is the kind of map that resulted from this first stage, and is here as well. I've got a few copies with me. If you want, you can get one from me later. What we learned there is there's a big difference between trips that people take that are routine and trips that are more incidental. And it's not between people who travel a lot by train and people who travel only little by train. It's about the kind of activity that they do. But when something wrong happens, you get into the column at the right, where everything turns red, basically. And people start to behave all in the same way. So these kind of visualizations we made, and we printed in large numbers and spread throughout the company to help people understand actually what people do on the platform, but then also why. So this is the back of that poster, which shows some barriers and opportunities, basically. We run these things with a company then in a workshop, to kind of explain them with them, but also find out with them what can be done with these things. After that, we decided to focus on one particular aspect that was really important to people, which is getting on and off the train and changing between trains. So that's where we go in our second iteration. And there we got some new partners on board. NS found out that actually we were doing this kind of work. So they said, we want to be more part of this because it's relevant for us, but also more departments within ProRail. Initially, we just worked with communication. So they wanted to be part of it, and we did actually part of the research again, but in a more deeper way, to also involve them in creating those insights and not just tell insights to them. It's really important that the people that are actually part of the project, the people of these organizations, help create the conclusions and the insights and the ideas, so they're also owned by them. So again, we asked people on the platform to tell stories, but then particularly on getting on and off the train or changing trains. And we ran a co-creation workshop where you see as well here in the middle a big map on the table that was used for storytelling. And of course ProRail and NS were here as well. Parallel to that, we worked with Eden Spiekerman, a design agency in Amsterdam, who also developed some concepts for new ideas for how people could be helped finding the right train, but also getting to that train and getting on in time. So these are some examples of these concepts in the station itself, how the platform might look differently, things that could be on your phone already at home. Sorry for this, some of this is in Dutch. And then while getting to the station, or even in the train, where to get off and when exactly to pack your computer. So again, we brought that to a workshop where we kind of learned that some of these concepts were actually worked on already by NS, and they wanted to take one of them further. And that's one that we actually tested then over the past 4 months on one line between Roosendaal and Zwolle, which is called the IJsserlijn. And in this line, we experimented with an app and also some signage on the platform in Den Bosch that some of you might have seen. So this app was tested by 700 people, and it shows the occupancy of the train, so which part is busy and which not. And it shows also, as you can see, where, for instance, you can get into the train with your bicycle. And this is how it looks on the platform. There's an LED screen of about 108 meters long on the platform that actually indicates where exactly the train stops, because that turned out to be the biggest problem that people had. Where does the train stop? If you don't know, you just hang about somewhere in the middle. The whole difference between A and B platforms that exist in many stations in the Netherlands is completely confusing for most people, so they don't really use it in a good place, in a good way. But here, as you can see, you can actually know where exactly your door is. So 4 sources of data were brought together for this. The train occupancy, the length of the train, that depends on the time of the day, obviously. The train composition, so what kind of carriages are there, what kind of compartments are there, where can you get in with your bike, for instance, and where does the train stop on the platform. We found, for instance, that train drivers in the Netherlands have some freedom themselves to decide where to stop. Within the limits of roughly 20 meters, they can decide for themselves. So you need to tell them to stop at a particular place, otherwise your sign won't work. So again, we tested this with people quantitatively with an app that actually asked them to answer some questions 3 times during this test, and then also interview people about this with really big phones, as you can see. And we interview people on the platform as well. Here you see some pictures of actually the sign in use on the platform. That's just about visible, I think. I guess the most important thing that we learned in this project is it's really crucial to find those different parties in an organization that can make this happen, because it's really difficult to make this happen. These kind of 4 types of information were all kind of in different parts of the organization. And each individual in that organization working in one department told us it's impossible to do a screen like that on a platform. But once we got them all together, and actually designing this kind of stuff really helped to get them together, they found out the only problem was ordering the screens in China, which took 4 weeks. Because they each have one piece of the puzzle, but they none have the overview of how that puzzle fit together. Only when they were together, they could find out. So I've got 3 predictions to end with, 10 seconds for each. It's turning red now. People's information hunger is not over yet, we found in this research. More information is welcome, but it should be built on existing information, not just replace it. There's lots of information around trains, but you need to build on that, not just wipe it and create something new. Second one, providing more information is not enough in itself. You need synthesis and visualization to create actionable insights. So that's for the people who use these kind of systems in the train, but that also applies to this actually, people in a company. They need to have the right synthesis and visualization to act on what you've learned. And the third one is that we will see extensive and early prototyping with actual users involved before introduction on a large scale. I think that's really crucial, and I've seen it several times today, how important that actually is for these systems to try them out sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you.